Welcome to this special episode created just for women navigating midlife. Whether you're facing an empty nest, going through a divorce, or riding the emotional roller coaster of hormonal changes, this stage of life can feel overwhelming, isolating, and often overlooked, but you're not alone. Hi, we haven't met yet. I'm Holly, a mental health counselor who helps women move through the complex emotions of midlife with compassion, clarity, and confidence. I've worked in the criminal justice system, I've supported families through trauma and grief, and now I'm specializing in helping women reconnect with themselves in this deeply transformational season. In this episode, I've invited one of my teammates to ask me the kind of questions that I hear all the time in therapy, questions that many women are quietly carrying. This is a chance for me to share some of the tools, perspective, and hope I offer in the therapy room. So whether you're new to therapy or just looking for a little support and insight, you're in the right place.
All right, Holly, let's start with the first question. Why is midlife such an emotionally complex season for so many women?
I think one is because there's really not a how-to guide. And for many generations, nobody talked about this type of stuff. I think us Gen Xers are the first ones that are really being not even just talking about it, but almost celebrating it. And so being able to have some more information out there and connect with people is super helpful. But for so many, they're just afraid, or they just think that they're crazy, or they just think that they're like gaining weight because they're getting older, or there's a million different ways that we can gaslight ourselves into not really digging into information or asking the questions we need to ask.
And so many women feel lost when their kids leave home. That's a huge thing. So, what's really going on emotionally during the empty nest phase?
I can speak from personal experience. For me, it was now what? My identity has been wrapped up in my kids. My schedule has been wrapped up in my kids. Even as they were getting older and were driving and didn't need me as much, they still were here and there was the energy in the house. And so I think it's just a different kind of quiet. It's a different kind of calm. And it's just a really interesting time to reconnect with ourselves and figure out what we want for the rest of our lives while supporting our kids at the same time. And one of the biggest things that I tell parents all the time is that when your children leave, it is the most pride and you'll be so happy. And at the exact same time, feel like your soul is getting ripped out of your body. And that's a really hard thing for people to understand, that two things can be true at the same time.
You think a lot of women are nervous about exploring themselves once they are no longer that huge title of mom?
Yeah, because where do you start? And I think for a lot of people, they just get stuck there when I ask them, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do? They have no idea. And so one of the tips that I give people is go back in time and look at your pictures. And when you're doing things that you were really enjoying, or you look at yourself and you're like, oh, I was so happy when we were doing insert whatever, that's where we start.
Next is hormonal changes in midlife. How do they affect mental health, and why don't we talk about it more?
That's the million dollar question. Why don't we talk about it more? We definitely need to, because what happens when we are hitting more midlife, and this can be anywhere from, we can start as early as 35, 38, but as we're aging, especially in our 40s and 50s, we're losing estrogen. And what people don't understand is when we're losing estrogen, or we have too much estrogen, our emotions and our mental health change drastically. A lot of women get misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder when really it's Hashimoto's disease. It's just a very complex thing. So I encourage everybody to find providers that will do the right blood work, that will talk to them about all these things and do the preventative care so that they don't feel like they're going crazy.
What is Hashimoto's?
So that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but it's a thyroid disease and you will see an endocrinologist for that. It definitely affects your moods. And so you can have really big extremes with it. And so that's why a lot of people get put on mood stabilizers instead of a referral to an endocrinologist.
So, what if a woman sees an endocrinologist and, like many of us, this endocrinologist or this doctor says, I don't know what's wrong with you. All your blood's coming back normal. What do you say to that woman?
Oh, here's a soapbox issue of mine. So just because it's in the normal range for someone does not mean it's in your normal range. When I first was going on this journey, love my old OBGYN. She was fantastic and she was great for the season that I needed her. But as I was starting to age, and I was like, I work out a lot and I eat right. And so I was gaining weight and things, I just felt yucky. So I asked her to run all the tests. She did. And then everything was in the normal range and she blew me off. And then actually said to me, do you know how many women would love to look like you look? You should just be really grateful for that. So that's when I picked up the phone and I called my friend Dr. Bartos and asked her if she would be willing to help me. And she obviously did. And she changed my entire life. I can't imagine how depressed and miserable I would be had I not thought to myself, yeah, this still isn't right. Let me find somebody who's going to listen to me. And that's the biggest thing. It's finding someone who's going to listen to you.
And I'm sure that takes a little bit of time to look around and find those providers that are actually curious and not just wanting to get you in their office and then leave you high and dry.
Absolutely. And the ones that are going to do all the tests and look for all of the things, not just do the basics and then get you in and get you out. And I honestly believe, and this might be controversial, but I truly think that in midlife, you need to see a female doctor, not a male doctor. Men don't get it no matter what stage of life, but they really don't get this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's an awesome take, Holly. And I love that because I'm sure there are so many women that are in midlife right now that their doctors are saying, no, you're healthy. You look great. You're doing the strength training at the gym, yet they don't feel well and they have no idea where to go next. And when a woman is looking for an endocrinologist or a provider that's really going to look at her as the full person, what are some traits you tell her to look for in that provider?
I want them to truly have in the title of either their practice on their website, their social media, whatever, something that is very specific to middle-aged women and what we're going through, and interview people. Like, just because someone's wearing a white coat does not mean that they know more than we know, or that we just have to listen to whatever they have to say. So interview them. They work for you.
I think a lot of women forget that, or a lot of people in general forget that you can interview your providers, you can interview doctors and therapists, but we
Mhm.
just think they've got the credentials, so they must have.
They must know. They must have the experience or the specialization or whatever it is. And that's just not true.
Do you want to touch on maybe some red flags that a woman could look out for? So let's say they look at the website, right? They're going, yeah, I think I like this doctor. I think I'm going to give it a go. And then they go into the session and they start feeling that kind of the bubble of intuition going, I don't know if this is the right fit. What are some red flags that they could look out for?
So that right there, if you go in and you feel that, you can leave. You do not have to stay. If you're getting dismissed, if you are not able to answer all the questions that you have, if you feel like you're just another number, or if they want to put you on like antidepressants and other meds without really doing the right type of blood work and asking the right questions.
I know that those tips are really going to help women because, again, the medical field is very scary. And I know many women that are just like, this doctor's under my insurance. I'm just going to take it because I don't have any other options. So I think that's going to be really helpful. Okay, so another specialty of yours, Holly, is helping women in midlife during divorce. And this can be especially heavy. Now, I would love to just hear your take. Why do you think so many women that are entering in midlife are getting a divorce?
I think that there's several factors, but I think the biggest is that we lose our identity a lot of times and the kids become the priority. And we forget that we have this marriage that we need to nurture and still stay connected to. And so you just start to have kind of your own lives and go your own separate ways. And then your kids leave and you're, like I was talking about earlier, that quiet. And it's just like the two of you and you don't even know each other anymore. Or a lot of people still will wait until their kids are grown and gone before they decide to divorce. There's a lot of different factors that go into it, but I think the biggest one truly is that we just don't stay connected and don't do the work to keep a healthy marriage.
I'm sure that the woman that is listening to this podcast right now is probably a woman in her midlife that has kiddos either heading off to college or they're already adults. And what advice would you have to her that she's wanting to strengthen her marriage and she wants to have a life outside of her kids and strengthen her marriage at the same time? What are some things that you would tell her?
I would tell her to start dating her husband again, to remember why they fell in love in the first place, and then go back and figure out your hobbies and be in community. Go hang out with your girlfriends, go on girls' trips. This is a whole different part of life where we have a lot of freedom. And so go and take it and enjoy it and love it.
Do you think that when each partner is able to really indulge in their own hobbies, that it strengthens the marriage as a whole?
Absolutely. Because what we don't want is so we talked about our kids becoming our identity. We don't want what our spouse likes and does to then become our identity after that and then really lose ourselves. Let's say your husband is a big golfer. So you're like, I want to spend time with him and I want to connect with him. So I guess I'm going to be a golfer now. No, let him go with his friends and you go and golf with your friends or go play pickleball or tennis or something with your friends. Find your own things so that you don't become, and I don't mean this like in the exact clinical term, but more of the what everybody thinks it means term is don't become codependent, where you just can't do anything without each other because again, you're losing yourself.
I think that's really easy to do because if your partner is really passionate about something, you want to see them happy and you also want to be a part of the thing that makes them happy, right? But really having separate hobbies can nourish the relationship as a whole.
Well, yeah, and do those things with them every once in a while. Don't think that you have to do it every single time, or that if they do leave you at home and go with their friends, that you don't take it as a slight. Let them have their independence just like you get to have your independence. But communicate about it. Communication is so huge.
Speaking of communication, what if this woman has been to the doctor? This doctor's not listening to her. The blood work is coming back that she's just fine, and her partner doesn't really know how to help her either. How would you tell this woman to communicate with her partner to really show that midlife comes with so many different things, including these emotional changes?
So that's actually a fantastic question and one that I hear a lot because when your emotions are all over the place and we can't really self-regulate like we normally did, and our husbands don't understand, it causes a huge wedge. And the hard part is that like we didn't get any education on this stuff. So a lot of times I'll have husbands come in my office. I'll have them either have their own individual session or come in with their spouse. And we talk through a lot of things. And then they can hear it differently when it's coming from me or from a different professional than they just can from their very emotional spouse.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to touch back on divorce because I'm sure a lot of the women that are listening are either going through the process of divorce, or they've been divorced for a little bit. And because so many couples are codependent with each other and do each other's hobbies, what can a woman do to really reconnect with herself after divorce?
So the best answer I have is find your people, find your community, and just be open and honest with them. I don't know what I would do without all of the amazing women in my life. And by connecting with them, they just give you hope. And really, they empower you to remind you of who you are and that you're a badass and you can do anything. And you have your own cheerleaders, right? You're built-in cheerleaders. So I think that's the biggest thing. Again, going back to finding your hobbies, what were you passionate about before? And what do you daydream about? If you could do anything, what would you do?
In this digital age, it's really hard to find community. So, how would you recommend this woman find her people?
I would join a league of some sort, whether it's kickball or dodgeball or pickleball, or if you like to sew, finding different groups like that. Or meetup.com is a really good way to do it too, where you just go and type in your interests and it tells you where people are meeting and what groups are, and then just go and put yourself out there. I've had a lot of men and women that had just gone through divorces that found a really good group of friends in different hiking groups, and just anything that really piques your interest, or you're like, I've never done this before, but I want to try. then just throw yourself into it and see.
Do you think it's beneficial to be around other women that are going through a divorce or who have been divorced? Or do you think it's still okay to find your community through married couples?
I think that there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer to that question. What I would say is if you're going through a divorce and you have a friend that is too, how are they handling it? Are they doing it in a healthy way? Is this something that is going to be helpful for you or hurtful for you? Because you're already in a terrible headspace. Even if you divorce in the most amicable way, it's awful and traumatic. And so I think you can lift each other up, but you can also bring each other down. So I'd be really cautious about that. Here's the best way I can put this is if you're around someone and they give you energy and you leave and you're like, oh man, I feel really great about myself. And that lunch went by so fast. I love this group. Be around them. If you walk away from somebody and you feel tired, you're drained, maybe you're a little bit more emotional, they can't be your people. And that, and I don't say that forever. They're just not your people right now. You can reconnect later, but you just need to really have a good support group while you're going through all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Being around your best friends is some of the best way to boost dopamine.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, we chatted about why midlife is so difficult, the emotions that come with it, but not only that, the hormone changes and what you should do to get that checked and to go to the doctor, how to discuss this with your partner, or if you're going through a divorce, how to find your community. So I feel like you've given the audience a really good checklist of what to look out for. Now, I would love to know, what are some red flags versus green flags of healing, right? So let's say you're going through divorce, you're in midlife. What are some things that you look for when you're chatting with your clients about whether they are healing or getting worse?
So how I look at it is I go all the way back to like our primal needs. Are you eating? Are you sleeping? Are you drinking water? Are you moving your body? When we can be doing all those things, we're on the path. It might take us a while, but we're on the path. If they're not doing those things or they're doing things that are destructive, now granted, a lot of times when people are going through terrible things, they might drink a little bit more, which I get, but like how much and how often? And so just checking in on those, like our little vices to see if they're, again, helpful or hurtful.
I love that. It's that intuition slash gut check again.
Absolutely. I am a big believer, and there's a lot of research that backs this up, that our instincts tell us everything. We just don't listen to them. Children do. But then as we age, we get conditioned to not trust ourselves. And I'm sure it'll be okay. They're probably nice. It'll be fine. There's a really good book by Gavin DeBecker called The Gift of Fear. And he interviews different survivors, and they all say that they had gut instincts were screaming to get away from that situation, that somebody was following them, that I shouldn't have been around this person. They just didn't listen.
I think as women too, we're conditioned not to listen to our gut, that
Mhm.
we're being too sensitive or too emotional or too hormonal.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Or well, go, you absolutely have to go give your uncle a hug and a kiss. Why are you not sitting on Santa's lap? So from the time that we were very little, we are taught to not have good boundaries around that stuff and not follow our instincts. And that has to change. That's another generational thing that has got to change.
I think Santa is a very wild topic and just a wild thing in society that we've accepted and normalized.
Yes, like forcing your kid to go sit on a creepy man's lap, make it make sense. I never did that with my children ever.
All right. So the last question that I have is a hard hitter. So you talked about healing as a process. That's something that you really discuss in your content and in so many areas of your life. So what does that really look like for a midlife woman who's starting over?
How we want to make that look is like nobody else's story. We want to create her story. What is going to work best for her? What does she need today? Who does she need to be around? What resources can she pull in? Does she need to be on medication for a little while? A lot of people do. Not long term, but just until you get through like the awfulness of all of this. Are you checking and going to the doctor to get your adrenals checked and your thyroid checked? Because when we are going through immense stress, all of us, every system in our body gets screwed up. So having the right professionals around you to walk you through it, but knowing that just because what works for your friend, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you or should work for you. So I try to encourage women, and I say it just like this is your recipe. So we're going to find the how-to guide to you, not to what everybody else thinks you should do or how you think this should look.
What a great way to end this podcast episode. Thank you so much, Holly. I just know that the audience is going to eat this up and is going to be so grateful for all of your information.
Awesome. Thank you.